Florida. It has been America's retirement destination for 50 years. The pitch was straightforward. No state income tax, warm weather year-round, and a cost of living lower than almost anywhere in the Northeast or Midwest. Communities built entirely around retirement. Golf courses, pools, neighbors on the same schedule. Homes were cheaper than in the states most retirees were leaving. The state took nothing from a pension or a Social Security check. For most of that 50 years, it worked. By 2023, roughly 365,000 Americans over 60 had moved there in just 3 years. The retirement math was simple, and the destination was obvious. What gets less attention is what Florida actually costs, and why for the first time in 50 years, more retirees are leaving the state than arriving. Take insurance. When you own a home in Ohio, homeowners insurance costs around $1,500 a year. When you buy a home in Florida, you pay $8,292 a year on average. That's the highest of any state in the country, and roughly 4 times what most retirees had been paying before they moved. Florida gets hit by hurricanes. It floods. Hail causes billions in damage every year. Insurance companies price what it costs to cover a home where those things happen regularly, and in Florida, that cost is steep. The bigger story, though, is what happened to Florida's insurance market between 2020 and 2023. Multiple insurance companies operating in the state went bankrupt. Others stopped writing new policies entirely. Florida had created a state-run insurer called Citizens, designed as a backstop for the small number of homeowners who couldn't find coverage anywhere else. By late 2023, Citizens had 1.4 million customers. It had become the largest property insurer in Florida because the private market had largely walked away. The state passed legislation to bring private insurers back, and it worked. Citizens shed 73% of its policies from the 2023 peak, falling to 385,000 by end of 2025 and around 336,000 by early 2026. It brought carriers back into the market. The price of coverage stayed where the crisis had pushed it. A retiree who moved in 2019 and budgeted $1,500 a year for insurance is paying $6,000 or more at renewal now. That's an extra $375 a month that wasn't in the plan. Healthcare works the same way. Most people assume Medicare handles everything in retirement. Medicare handles part of it. It covers hospital stays and doctor visits, but it has gaps, and filling those gaps requires additional coverage purchased separately from private insurers. In most of the country, that additional coverage costs a retiree around $297,000 to $320,000 over their remaining lifetime. In Florida, the same coverage costs up to $375,000. That's $75,000 more per person than the national average for the same coverage, purely because of where they chose to retire. That gap compounds over time in a way that most retirement calculations don't account for. Healthcare costs in Florida are rising at around 5.8% a year. Social Security raises its payments by around 2.4% a year. Every year, those two numbers grow further apart. HealthView calculated that a healthy couple retiring today will eventually spend more than their entire lifetime Social Security income just on medical costs, before housing, before food, before anything else. The full value of every check Social Security sends, plus more, goes to healthcare alone. That's what a 5.8% annual increase looks like after a decade of compounding against a 2.4% raise. Then there are the Condo Associations. Almost every Florida retirement community runs on monthly association fees. Most retirees factor those fees into their budget, but they don't factor in what happens when the association runs out of money. For decades, many Florida condo associations kept their monthly fees low by postponing large costs. Roofs that needed replacing got patched. Structural problems got noted and delayed. The reserves stayed thin. In June 2021, a 12-story condo building in Surfside, Florida, collapsed in the middle of the night. 98 people died. The building had known structural problems for years. After Surfside, Florida passed a law requiring older condo buildings to inspect their structures and fully fund their repair reserves. Associations across the state suddenly faced the accumulated bill for everything they'd postponed. The way they collected it was through a special assessment, an extra charge, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars per unit, sent to every owner with a deadline attached. At one development in South Florida, the board sent owners a bill for over $134,000 per unit to cover roof replacement and structural repairs. One resident had spent his entire retirement savings buying his unit for $190,000 in 2019. After the assessment arrived, he listed it for $350,000. After months on the market, it sold for $110,000. Condo inventory for sale in South Florida more than doubled between 2023 and 2025. Most of the sellers were retirees who couldn't pay a bill they never saw coming. Stack all of it against what the average retiree actually earns. The average Social Security check in 2026 is around $2,030 a month. Insurance averages $690 a month in Florida. Medicare itself runs $203. Additional coverage to fill the gaps adds around $250. Association fees in a retirement community start at $400. The average electricity bill in Florida runs $166 a month, driven almost entirely by air conditioning that runs year-round. That's over $1,700 in fixed costs before a single trip to the grocery store. And the income tax saving that started the whole calculation? Most states that have income taxes exempt Social Security entirely or only tax a portion above a certain income level. For the average retiree bringing in $2,030 a month, the saving from moving to Florida is close to zero. The number that drew millions of retirees to Florida saves the average Social Security recipient nothing on their primary income source. In 2025, 45.5 thousand adults over 65 moved to Florida. In the same year, almost 45,000 moved out. The net gain was 815 people. For a state that built its entire identity around being the place Americans retire to, that's as close to zero as it has ever been. The people leaving aren't hard to find. Georgia's average homeowners insurance is $2,004 a year. Tennessee averages $3,045. North Carolina averages around $2,366. All three states are significantly cheaper to insure in than Florida, and all three exempt at least some retirement income from state taxes. Several retirement communities in the foothills of North Carolina and the suburbs of Atlanta have seen sharp increases in Florida retirees arriving over the past 3 years, trading the Florida sun for an insurance bill that costs a fraction of what they were paying. Florida's retirement promise still works for the right person. Someone with significant savings, good health, and the financial flexibility to absorb a $6,000 insurance bill or a sudden six-figure assessment is in a reasonable position. The no-income tax advantage is genuine, and at high enough income levels, it more than covers what everything else costs. Florida is the most visible version of a pitch that other states are now running. Texas, Tennessee, and the Carolinas are all marketing themselves to the same retirees Florida attracted for 50 years, with the same income tax argument and the same promise of lower costs. The question of what fills the gap between the pitch and the actual bill is one those states haven't had to answer yet. Thank you for watching.